call this meeting to order now. Welcome to meeting number 13 of the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs.
21.4, the committee is undertaking the study of the main estimates 2022-2023. The number of votes were referred to the committee on Tuesday, March 2022. Votes 1 and 5 under the Department of Veteran Affairs, vote 1 under the Veterans Review and Appeal Board, minus the adoption of the interim supply on March 2022 in the amount of 3/12 of the total amount. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, pursuant to the House Order of November 25, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. Today's meeting is also taking place in a webinar format. Webinars are for public committee meetings and are available only to members, the staff, and witnesses. Members are entered immediately as active participants. All functionalities for active participants remain the same. The staff will be non-active participants and can therefore only view the meeting in gallery view. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the proceedings and verification officer. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. And when you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. Nous sommes heureux aujourd'hui.
We are pleased to have with us today the Minister of Veterans Affairs for the first hour and representatives from the department. I will introduce them before we begin the second hour. To begin, I am very pleased to welcome the Honorable Lawrence MacAulay, Minister of Veterans Affairs. Minister, the floor is yours.
Minutes for your opening remarks. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members. Thank you for your invitation to update the committee on what our government is doing to support Canada's veteran community. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the tragic deaths last week of 4 military officer cadets at the Royal Military College in Kingston. On behalf of the government, I extend my heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of the 4 young adults and to the entire RMC community. It's always a pleasure to appear before you, and I want to thank you for your recent works on veterans monuments, service dogs, and other important issues for Canadian veterans and their families. Mr. Chair, along with some colleagues on this committee, I was honored over the past few weeks to pay my respects at the war cemeteries and monuments in France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. From Vimy to Passchendaele to Holton, I was reminded of the enormous sacrifice that Canadians have made in the service of peace around the world. Seeing the Canadian flag flying overseas is a touching reminder that the people of Europe have not forgotten the Canadians who went to fight in the First and Second World Wars. Along with my colleagues here, we met with the Juno Beach Centre, the local mayor, and people from the community to discuss the proposed condo development in the area of the Juno Beach Centre. I also met with my French counterpart to discuss our concerns of this proposed construction. We agreed on the importance to honor the sacrifice of Canadian soldiers who landed at Juno Beach and to never forget the 359 Canadians who fell on the beach on June the 6th, 1944. We resolved to work together to find a solution to the dispute making sure that Juno Beach Center is not negatively impacted, and to guarantee that we protect this historic site for Canada and France. As you may have heard, the Duke of Sussex announced at the closing ceremonies that Vancouver and Whistler will host the 2025 Games, which is a big deal for Canada. Like all Canadians, I look forward to watching our teams compete on home soil in 3 years' time. In terms of service delivery to Canada's veterans, I think it's important to restate that the Government of Canada is fully committed to the health and well-being of veterans and their families. This includes making sure that they're getting answers as quickly and efficiently as possible. Since February, when I was last here, the government confirmed that it will provide near $140 million to extend more than 350 staff to work on the backlog. This is great news for the veterans. It will allow us to keep investing in our employees so that we can keep getting decisions out to veterans as quickly as possible. As of April the 29th, there were 10,937 applications that were over the standard time. That's more than a 50% decline from the high of over 23,000 when we began investing in the backlog. That is good progress, but we know that there's still more work to do, and we are committed to doing it. As a government, we're committed to addressing the backlog and turnaround times. The $5.5 billion of funding this year, in this year's main estimates, and an additional commitment made through the 2022 budget will help us meet this goal. The main estimates reflect nearly $2 billion more in annual spending for Veterans Affairs Canada than when we formed the government in 2015. This is nearly $2 billion more going into the pockets of veterans. And while there is more work to do, that is something we can be proud of. Mr. Chair, let me turn to another issue that is very important to our government. That is veterans' homelessness. Simply put, one veteran homeless is too many. Budget 2022 announced an additional $62.2 million to launch a new veterans homeless program. This program will provide services and rent supplements to veterans experiencing homelessness and help them get back on their feet. Our programs like the Veterans Emergency Fund and Veterans and Family Wellbeing Fund are also key support to homes and veterans at risk.
Minister, thank you so much. Your time is up, and we're going to start a round of questions. And I start with the first VP of the committee, Mr. Frank Caputo. The floor is yours for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you through you, Mr. Chair, to the Minister for appearing. I hope that you've had a good time back home in Canada since arriving back here. I want to pick up, Mr. Chair, where the Minister left off with respect to the Save Juno Beach matter. I'm wondering if the Minister could please update this committee about what has happened since his visit in relation to the campaign to save Juno Beach.
Your mic, Minister, open. Okay.
Thank you very much, colleague. And thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the question. And my honorable colleague is fully aware of the importance because he was with me, plus other members on the committee when we landed there. And I think he would fully agree that our presence there as a group was so vitally important. And I think that it's fair to say we highlighted the issue that is so vitally important for Canada. As Frank, as we all saw, especially when we came out of the first meeting, to see that Juno Beach pretty well filled up with younger people from, they were speaking French, they were from France, I would guess. And so that was so vitally important. And I also know that he would agree that when we had a lot of news media there, we had the National, regional and local media. And when we went out for the interview, I think that Frank would agree, and Rachel would too, that and Luke, they were there with me, and I appreciate it so much. It was a combined effort of everybody in the Parliament of Canada in order to indicate how important we felt it was. But I think the interview was so vitally important. And I believe Frank would agree that the lady at the center that got out right on the highway and indicating quite clearly what this would do to the traffic and all that, and to have it on the media made it so much better for me when I went to meet my counterpart in Powers, because it's obvious that it was highlighted. And in fact, that's what we wanted to do. And as a group, that's what we did do. So, and then if you wish me to continue on, I had a great meeting, and I think it's thanks to the effort of us all, and we had a meeting with my counterpart. It was actually over an hour I spent with her, and she indicated that she was going to start the process with the regional political officials in the area in order to put a group together to sit down and see if we could come to a proper resolution for the Juno Beach. And without a doubt, that news conference with us all there was so vitally important. And she did. And now I understand that the Juno Beach, the town, and the contractor, and I'm not sure if I have ever, but they're all going to sit down and try to come to a resolution. So it's so vitally important. But of course, the fact of money come up too. And I know my colleagues are fully aware that we don't buy property. We would like to. I know all of us there would like to have just fixed it all up right then. But I think if there was ever a time that working together as the government of Canada, and I've been around a long time, that was a prime example of everybody pulling together what it can do. Now, it's not resolved yet. And of course, Frank, you're fully aware it's under French law, and we can't dictate what's going to happen. But I believe with the way it was put together, it looks very good, because I don't think even the contractor really understood what a delicate situation he was dealing with. No, we never spoke to the contractor, but I don't think there was much of a protest. In fact, I don't think there was much of a protest till we arrived. There was some, but we certainly highlighted it as a group. So again, I couldn't emphasize, you talk about the Parliament of Canada working together. That was a prime example of it. And hopefully it'll be a great result for Juno Beach and for our veterans, because we all viewed what they were doing, and it wasn't put on. These people were right there trying to understand exactly what Canadians did, and that's what it's all about. It was really bring you to tears if you want to know the honest truth. Thank you so much. That's basically what happened.
Thank you. I just have 1 minute, so I'll ask you a very important question here. And this relates to the backlog, and you probably aren't surprised to hear me ask about this, that $139 million was roughly earmarked for temporary staff to address the backlog. Can you confirm whether all temporary staff have had their contracts renewed and whether this $139 million has been distributed?
Yes, Frank, a very important question. And of course, you highlight that issue before it came to play. And it made an interesting discussion the last time we sat down. But in fact, that helps, truly. And we did get the funding. And my understanding is that the full contingent is there in order to deal with the backlog. But I might turn it over to Stephen to give, I guess that's basically the way it is. Yes, they are hired. And that's important because it gives us a chance we're reducing the backlog, and that's what we want to continue to do. And now we're on the track of doing it. And perhaps the deputy might like to comment on that, but pretty important issue.
Thank you, Ms. Minister. The time is over, so I have to thank Mr. Caputo and now go to Mr. Wilson Miao for 6 minutes.
Tough chair, I haven't.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for Minister for his appearance today in our committee. as a colleague had asked you some question about the Juno Beach Center visit, I just want to read a statement from the Juno Beach Center that they have quoted. We're not generally opposed to the projects like these on former battlegrounds. The French deserve to enjoy the freedoms of our veterans' sacrifice that brought them. End quote. My question to the minister is, have you heard any local citizen that lives around the Juno Beach Center against the project that is happening? And as you have mentioned in your update, can you share a little bit more on that insight?
Your mic, please, Minister.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair,
That's
you're a
okay.
tough chair, and I'm not handling this properly either. But whatever. Thank you very much for your question. And yes, indeed, without a question, we met with the mayor in the town. It's hard to get it all in, but we met with the mayor and concerned citizens from the area, I guess would be the proper way to word it. And without a question, it's obvious that we had it was the Parliament of Canada that was represented there, and it certainly put a strong voice to it. And we had the mayor of the town. Now they're not, and the people were concerned about Juno Beach, but they're not against development or anything at all like that. But the fact is, when you look at this and see the way it's developed, and we were there as a group, and it was explained so clearly what it would do with the one highway, it's just a one street into Juno Beach. And if you're going to have a lot of traffic, if you're going to have a lot of condominium development and that, the safety factor could come into that too. So that was well explained in the news conference, which was a great help to me, I would think, when I met my counterpart in Paris. But it also would indicate that probably, if we're not careful, it could reduce the number of bus tours and that come there. And without a question, I think we're doing better in this country. But without a question, it's so important, and they truly care. If you go to France or Belgium or the Netherlands and other places too, but how important it is for their children, the school children, to learn exactly what took place in the Second World War. It is quite a thing, they tell me that young men and women, as they used to say, from away over the sea, came over, kicked the Nazis out, and all they said to them was, live your life the way you wish to live. And that was told to me so many. I have had the privilege of being around Veterans Affairs for a number of years. And that's pretty heartwarming to hear that. And without a question, this is why the people that connected with Juno Beach are so concerned that that facility is wide open and widely used. And I think my colleague could agree, the day we were there, it was used because, as I said before, when we came out of the meeting, there was a lot of young people there. And that's pretty nice to see.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. And in your remark, you mentioned about this year's budget on helping with veterans' homelessness. And how will a homeless veteran benefit from the new veteran homelessness program, which had $62.2 million in this year's budget, building on this $45 million in last year's budget? And what more is being done by Veteran Affairs Canada to resolve the issue of veterans' homelessness?
Well, of course, I appreciate your question. I appreciate all questions. And yes, of course, it's so one veteran, as everybody would agree around this table, that one veteran homeless is just too many. And that's why it's so important that now it is over $100 million allocated in order to make sure that we can put the program in place, working with Ahmed Hussein and his budget. There's $70 billion, I believe, in that budget, and we know it's there. And working with him, we intend to make sure. Our goal is to make sure there's no homeless veterans in this country. Not an easy thing to do, because over the years, dealing with veterans and veterans homelessness things can happen. Many of us, it's hard to realize just what veterans do go through. Some of them don't want to deal with us. They don't want to see a politician or a bureaucrat from Veterans Affairs. They do not want to see them at all. In fact, sometimes they tell me if they go into a shelter, the homeless people will go out the back door just so they don't want to have to talk to them. It's unfortunate, but if you can put programs in place in order to get them to feel a bit better about themselves, you can basically bring them back into society. Rachel was with me last night in Toronto, and Helmets to Hard Hats was a prime example of what can take place when you have groups that work so hard in order to help people to get back into society. And that's in fact what we're trying to do to make sure.
Thank you, Minister McCauley. And là, je voudrais inviter.
Now I would like to invite the member who went on the trip with you and the second vice chair of the committee. So, Mr. Luc Desilets, you have the floor for the next 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. McCauley. I'm always happy to see you. I am going to have to I'm going to ask you questions in a very streamlined way. So first of all, thank you for responding to our letter. Thank you for your well-written letter and for doing so within reasonable delays. So what I understand from that information is that we are not really comparing the same type of data. We have different kinds of analyses, and the main thing that confuses us is that sometimes we have numbers about a first request by a veteran, and on the other hand, we have requests that are repeated or subsequent requests, and we end up with backlogs without really knowing what requests make up these backlogs. The Ombudsman told us that the first request is the most important request and that it is the key element in this analysis. So I would like to hear your thoughts about the first request. There haven't been any significant improvements in the numbers. So are you able to speak to that, speak to the importance of the first request and the fact that we're not seeing any improvements in the numbers, whether for Francophones and Anglophones?
Luke, thank you very much for the question, and you've asked it to me before, and I can assure you, first of all, I want to thank you for your participation in Juno Beach and what you did. I mean, it all helped so much. And on the question you asked, I can assure you that wait times have decreased for female veterans and Francophone veterans. And I think it'd be better if I had Steve give the breakdown on, or perhaps the deputy could give you the overall breakdown. Yes, there is a difference. Yes, there is an improvement of about 5 weeks or so, but I'll let the deputy give you the exact figures. Thank you.
Merci. Si ça va, Monsieur le Président.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may I? Yes, of course. Go ahead. So thank you very much for the question, and you are completely right, Mr. Desilets. Mr. Desilets mentioned that the first requests are very important, and this is one of the indicators that we use for tracking. I can tell you that there has been an improvement for the first requests. So overall, and for Francophones and for Anglophones, there has been an improvement. I can tell you that for Francophones last year, for 2020-2021, for first requests, we had about 52.3 weeks. And for 2021-2022, the average time is 45.2 weeks. So we have these numbers, we are tracking them, and we are always ready to share these numbers. And we do have we keep a close eye on our progress.
Regardez, moi pour
Thank you. So I'm a visual person, and I had to make myself a graph, and this graph, I made it with the department's numbers. And according to this graph, there hasn't been any improvement for Francophones. Something happened with the Anglophones that created a gap. So that means that things haven't changed for Francophones since 2018. So we have about 40 to 60 weeks, and that's been happening since 2018. And yes, I am aware that you are working on this, but how can we do more? Do we need more human resources? Do we need more money? What else can we do? Because we know that we want to focus on the initial request, the first request. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Desilets. We do put the focus on the first requests. It's because for these veterans, it's the first time that they are making a request for a service from the Veterans Affairs Department. So we do put a very high focus on these first requests. We always try to improve the process in general. So we try to improve disbursements, for example, and we now have personnel that can focus on these programs. We also receive requests from Anglophones, Francophones, and we try to improve all of our services. I can share our numbers and graphs to give you some up-to-date information, and we can also publish it to make sure that the general public is aware. We make those publications 3 or 4 times per year, so we can certainly share that information with you and make sure that we're always talking about the same numbers and that we are on the same page, because I know that it's very important for you. Thank you.
pour nous,
Thank you,
effectivement.
Lou.
Something important for us indeed. Thank you, Mr. Desilets. You will have an opportunity to come back to this a little later. And now I must give the floor to our next colleague.
Rachel Blenny for 6 minutes, please. Go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Chair. And hello, Minister, and hello, Mr. Ledwell. It's good to see both of you here today, and I did appreciate seeing you yesterday, Minister, at the Hard Hats, or Helmets to Hard Hats, an amazing organization. I was sitting with my friends from the Canadian Labour Congress, really enjoyed my time with them, and really enjoyed hearing from so many veterans who moved from one place to another, and it was such a smooth transition. So I was happy to see you and happy, of course, to support the important work that they're doing. So my questions, of course, today for you are around my bill, which is Bill C-221, which is addressing the issue of marriage after 60. As you know, Minister, this is something that I'm very passionate about, and you may know that the committee has just started a study. And last week we had some tremendous witnesses here before us. And one of the things that I found very concerning, Minister, is how hurt these veterans and RCMP, retired RCMP, were by this reality. And in one case, we heard a story from someone who married after 60, did not know that his partner would not receive the pension after his passing, and that devastating conversation to have to go inform your loved one that that's the reality. We also heard from a couple who had been married for 17 years, and they're both in good health, so I hope to see them married for many more years, Minister. And I want to quote a few things that Walter said. He said, "It's shameful that I have to stand here and talk to people like yourselves about trying to justify my finances after death. I feel kind of insignificant with this whole thing. Basically, how I feel is that she, meaning his wife, has been a good caregiver, not only to me, but to this community. She's well respected, and it's almost like an insult that I would leave this earth and not have anything to leave." He also mentioned later on that he felt that the government was saying that she was not worth it. And I hope, Minister, that you agree with me that after 17 years of marriage, she is definitely worth having some sort of supports after he is no longer with her. So I'm just wondering if you could tell the committee, and I will interrupt you, as you know, Minister, with deep respect, but I'm just wondering if you could tell the committee what steps are being taken internally within the department to start to address this issue in a meaningful way. We know that there is some funds that are available through the Veteran Survivors Fund. Would like to also hear if there's any money moving from that's actually supporting women who no longer, largely women, sometimes it's men, who no longer have their partners with them and have absolutely no survivor's benefits after they lose that person that they may have been married to. In one case, I've heard of somebody who's been married now over 30 years. Minister?
Thank you, Rachel. And yes, you will interrupt me. I know you will. And that's okay. I want to thank you so much, too. I think it's only fair that I take time to thank you. I think, we did a good deed together. Last night and at Juno Beach, I also echo what you had to say about last night, and it is touching to see. There's hardships and there are great things. Last night was victory. I know that I've told you before that we've been working with SATS Canada and the Canadian Institute for Military and Veterans Research, and we do have that information and we're analyzing it, and we will, in our part, I know you understand that the total situation, we will use the results to research how to best support the veterans, and I understand, and you are going to be dealing with this at the committee, and I would also be very interested in what results you will what results that will come from the committee.
Thank you so much, Minister. Here's the interruption that you were expecting. So if there is any numbers, I would really like them passed on to the committee. We do need to see that, especially be relevant for our study. But I also, just before my time runs out, I just wanted to tell you that we heard from a veteran who, as you know, Minister, veterans who marry after 60, RCMP officers, federal civil service workers, can put between 30 to 50% of their pension away every single month to build a bit of a nest egg to support that loved one, which is very concerning to me, of course, because that means that our people who served us in many different ways are now in a poorer state for their whole retirement. And I think that's something we should all be concerned about. But we did hear a story about a veteran who put aside $153,000 for their loved one after years and years. Unfortunately, she is not well, and it doesn't look like she's going to make it, and it looks like he will be losing her before she loses him. But all of that money, $153,000, is completely gone. They do not get it back. So I'm just wondering if the minister could talk to us about why somebody who would take apart part of their pension, make that choice because of the system we have in place, submit that money to make sure that their loved one has that nest egg. And then if they lose that loved one, not only do they lose that person, but they lose all of those savings historically.
Rachel, are you talking about a personal investment?
No, Minister, I'm talking about people who married after 60, who know that they will not be able to leave a survivor's benefit for their loved ones because they were married after 60.
Yes, they saved them 160.
So they take part of their own pension and they put it aside. They put it aside between 30 to 50%. And in this case, it was $153,000 over the last many years that they've been saving for that nest egg for their loved one out of their own pension, something that they would fill out a form for out of your department. And now that loved one is dying, they will not receive any of that money back. Yeah. So we just want to know, where is that money going and why isn't it returned to this person? It's their pension money.
Minister, 15 seconds, please.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. You're very stern, but the truth is I will get the information and make sure that you have it. I certainly will. Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you. So now let's go for 5 minutes round of questions, and I invite MP Anna Roberts to open her mic. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you, Mr. Chair, my question to the minister is this. Funds allocated for PTSD service dogs. What organizations will be receiving these funds, and how will your department guarantee that they are utilized responsibly? Who will take accountability for that?
Thank you very much. And of course, service dogs is of a great interest, and we feel it can help veterans with a mental condition. That's why we did fund a pilot project to evaluate the safety and efficiency of service dogs. And as you're likely aware, in 2019, we funded the Wounded Warriors of Canada for a project. But one of the big problems that we have in this issue is, it's quite simply, there has been no set of national standards put in place. And we tried to bring everybody together a few years ago to achieve the standards. But unfortunately, there is not very much agreement among people as to how to put these standards together. It's something I can assure you we will continue to work on, but that's simply where we are on this issue.
So thank you for that response. But you said that you funded a pilot project through Wounded Warrior. So my question to that is, how much were they funded, and what did they do with the money? Were they able to support more dogs for the veterans? I'd like to understand more details.
Thank you very much. I'll let the deputy expand on that service dog. It's quite an issue, really, and I appreciate the question.
Please, Mr. Lidwell, go ahead.
Merci. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the question. Yes, there was funding through the Veteran Family and Wellbeing Fund in 2019 for Wounded Warriors. They received funding directly to expand their PTSD service dog program. It was a single investment that took place at that time. We do provide support, I should say, for veterans who have costs associated with the care and maintenance of vision guide dogs. And we'll provide support up to $1,500 for that. The Wounded Warriors program was a single year grant of $245,000. As the ministers indicated, we are still trying to ascertain the standards that will be associated with this before we can develop anything further with respect to support for service dogs.
And maybe you can elaborate for me. So this pilot project, where was it? Did you have the opportunity to also have witnesses or individuals from the veterans community that already have a service dog, and to maybe work with them on how to assist in the training so that we ensure that the service dogs are trained for the purpose of helping our veterans?
Thank you for that follow-up question. We would rely, and we have relied on Wounded Warriors themselves to come forward with that report. We note that they were tracking the placement of 63 PTSD service dogs through a certified service dog provider. And at the end of the 21-22 fiscal year, there remained approximately 101 individuals on the wait list. That's information that we've received from Wounded Warriors. So we are tracking that through that one-year investment and relying on reports back from Wounded Warriors themselves on the use of those service dogs.
I think it's pretty important to indicate, too, that the standards are a problem here, Deputy, for us to continue and to expand the service. It's to get the standards. We're working on that, but it's hard to bring the parties together and to establish national standards. That's really what we need.
So wouldn't it be more advantageous that we ask our veterans that have service dogs to participate in a national standard? And I'm sorry because I wasn't here in the last Parliament, but I have spoken to several veterans and pain management doctors. So would it not be advantageous that we receive some information or do a pilot project with them?
Yes, you're right, but there was a little problem with agreement in that area too, of course. So I'll let the deputy expand. He has all the stats on that issue, but that's one of the problems we have, was to get get a national standard, get some agreement, and just what they should do. Deputy, I'll leave it over to you, but I think that's one of our problems.
Yes.
Deputy, in 15 seconds.
Go ahead. In 15 seconds, thank you, Mr. Chair. As the minister has indicated, we do have a challenge with a national standard. It's not been established yet. There are only clear service dog standards in 3 provinces currently in the country, in British Columbia, Alberta, and Nova Scotia. We want to see a national standard and really see this applied across the country so we can serve all veterans in all parts of the country.
Thank you so much. Time is expired, so I'd like to invite MP Richie Valdez for 5 minutes, please. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, Minister McCauley, and Mr. Ledwell. Thank you so much for your time today to answer all of our questions. Minister, in your opening statement, you provided an update on the backlogs, and we recently heard some challenges that female veterans have had facing, that they face with the backlogs. They share their testimonies with us. So can you provide an update on what's being done to address the backlogs specific to female veterans?
Thank you very much. I better be careful of the chair here. So anyhow, yes, it is with female. I think it's appropriate for me to say that we had a national conference, a women's conference for veterans. It was 2019 was the first one, I believe. And at that time, I just had become minister at that time, and I indicated at that time that would become an annual event. And I think that's part of the way to understand. We had some problems really with, women veterans have different requirements than men veterans. And of course, all of these things we have been working on over the last number of years. But of course, with the investment too of nearly $340 million, that gives, of course, the department the finances in order to be able to basically do the research and find out just exactly what's needed, plus the fact that people to deal with the files along with it. So that's basically what we've done. As you know, we have reduced the backlog by basically 50% or a little better, but again, that's not good enough, and everybody agrees with that. We have to continue to do that, but we have to do research, continue to do research, and that's why this conference was put in place. But women's, Aboriginals, there's a number of veterans that have some different requirements than, like after the Second World War, the majority of veterans were male, and of course now things have changed substantially, and the department is adjusting to that and to make sure that we're able to deal. We have a dedicated team, of course, working, I think they call it a spike team, in order to work on female applications too, and that's helping. We have Luke asked the question on Francophone. With Francophone and women veterans, we have spike teams in place also to help bring the numbers down. But perhaps the deputy would like to add to that, but that's basically what we have been doing.
I could, Mr. Chair, just add one item to what the minister has underlined, and that is that we are modernizing the table of disabilities so that it reflects female veterans. The table of disabilities is a legacy issue that we have, much of it established during the time when the overwhelming majority of those who have served were male. We're modernizing that table to make sure that it truly reflects the needs of all veterans, and especially female veterans.
Thank you. So Minister McCauley, I'm going to do a selfish plug. So the next time you have that women's veteran event, I'm going to ask you to invite us all within this committee to join you whenever you host that next event. The next question I have is more around providing an update on the progress that's being done specifically for accessing services for Indigenous veterans as well, or have you had any changes or updates regarding Indigenous outreach to the veterans?
Thank you very much. And we've invested, you're probably aware, but we invested $30 million to recognize Second World War Métis veterans. We've developed a strategy on outreach to veterans and their families living in northern communities. including Indigenous veterans living in the North. And I do believe we have there's a group from Veterans Affairs Canada have a regular schedule to go up north and to make sure that they're dealing with veterans, to make sure they have the department on site in order to deal with that. And of course, we increasingly were partnering with organizations across the country, which is so helpful, including Indigenous Service Canada, to increase the awareness of our programs and services. Some of the problems that you see when with veterans, and even like we have the education and training program. Honestly, it's hard to believe, but sometimes people are not aware of these programs, and it's so important. Number one, if they can, it helps them get back into the workforce. As Rachel and I last night were at that meeting, it's so important, these kind of things. Also, reaching out in the Indigenous languages, which all of this we're, as Paul or the deputy indicated quite clearly, that's what we're working on, to rearrange the table to make sure we're adjusting to the requirements of for Veterans Affairs Canada. We are and will continue to do that.
Thank you, Minister Macaulay. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Luc Desilets pour 2 minutes.
2.5 minutes, please. So we have 2 questions of 2.5 minutes each. Mr. Desilets, over to you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A short question and with a short answer, I hope. We can see in the budget planning that there's a significant decrease of $811 million. 2021-22 versus 2022-23. Why is there that significant decrease of 12%?
Monsieur le Ministre.
Luke, thank you, colleague, for the question. It's the question I get asked why fund money is returned. What has to take place, number one, is that we have enough of funding in place in order to make sure we're able to pay for the remuneration of veterans that have received benefits. But there are also, as you know, this is estimates. And since that, there's one example of $140 million that went into hiring more people, which in the end will mean there'll be more applications improved, which means the department will be putting out more money, which means the estimates in the fall, my guess, will be somewhat different. But I can assure you, my honourable colleague, and I'm well aware you're very dedicated to this task, the dollars will be there to make sure that we provide the support for the veterans that truly deserve it, and I appreciate your question.
Merci.
Thank you. I have a hard time understanding over 1 year money that's gone unspent in the current context. I have a hard time understanding that. There's a significant addition of human resources for francophones, so you would think that at least the same amount of money as last year would be spent. It's for services and support that there's a major decrease, $800 million. So, Minister, I don't have much time. The question was asked earlier. You know, I care a lot about Juno Beach. Yes, we were there, and I had other interviews here in Quebec. Can you tell me concretely, where are we at? I know everything that's been done to date, but are there any solutions that are being planned? What are the developments from the last week?
The solutions that are you talking about the programs or Juno Beach?
Non, Juno. Là, non, on revient à Juno.
No, Juno. The condo problem. Over the last week, have there been developments?
No,
15 seconds,
yes.
please, Minister.
Can I give just 15 seconds, Mr. Chair, please? He's the tough chair, this fella. But anyhow, there's a mediation process in place. And look, we can't be involved in that. It's all the groups that are there, and the French government is fully involved. So I think what we did there started a process, the only process that we could do, because it's French land under French law and all of that. So hopefully and I'll keep you informed of any development for sure. But what we did was a big help, and hopefully it'll be resolved properly. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your
Thank you, Minister Macaulay. And, I have to, deal with that. I have no choice. So now I'd like to invite MP Rachel Blaney for 2.5 minutes. Please open your mic.
Well, thank you, and I always appreciate how well our chair keeps us on time, so I thank him for it. So, Minister, if I could come back, so just so that you understand the appropriate language around the pensions, it is called the Optional Survivor Benefit, which is in correlation with the Marriage After 60 clause. So, for me specifically, what I'm trying to understand is we know that if they fill out this form, if they contribute that money, and in this one particular case, over $150,000 was contributed, if their loved one dies before they do, that nest egg that they've put away for themselves is gone. So what I am trying to get to be clear is, does that money go back to the government? Does that government just go back to general revenue? Because we know it is not going back to the veteran, the RCMP officer, or the federal civil servant. So if you could just let us know, where does that money go when it doesn't go to the people who should have it?
Rachel, my colleague, I thank you very much for your question. And the truth is, I will be in contact with you after this, and my office will be too, in order that you get the question. Is this money that a veteran has saved from a pension of their own? If it is, it belongs to either the person who invested it or the estate. But I don't think that's what you're asking me.
No, it is absolutely what I'm asking you, and I appreciate you saying that. I do believe it belongs to the person or the estate. So thank you for saying that.
Well, I don't know.
And I thank you for looking into it. So, Minister, if you could also let me know, the Director General of the RCMP Compensation Services has told my office that the pensioner must take a medical examination to determine whether he or she is not suffering from terminal illness, and must live for a minimum of 12 months from the time that the monthly contributions commence for the optional survivor benefit. So can we just confirm from VAC whether this policy is in place for veterans who want to take part of the OSB program?
I will make sure that you receive appropriate response, Rachel, but we have to find out exactly just what's taking place, to find out where this money directly came from, where it's invested, and what takes place after. That will happen, I will assure you.
Thank
but
you so
we
much,
have to
Minister.
get a full understanding of
that.
what it is.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The chair will be after us anyhow.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Blaney. So, Minister, we're going to have 2 other interventions. So it's meant that we're going to go till 2:05 instead of stay up 2 o'clock. So for 5 minutes, we have Miss Katie Wagenthal and also Fraser Tolby, who's going to ask you a question during 5 minutes. Please go ahead, Miss Wagenthal.
Thank you, Chair, and so good to see you again, Minister, as well as Mr. Ledwell. Appreciate you being here. As you know, I hear from you that we have a problem in regard to national standards for service dogs, and that problem developed because of it imploded, actually, that committee, because of a conflict of interest that existed extensively across the board, with not enough arm's length from those who were engaged in making those standards take place. So I'm glad it's defunct, and we do need another one, and that's certainly something we're working on here as a committee, and looking forward to presenting recommendations to VAC on that. Now, in the meantime, you did give funding to Wounded Warriors Canada, and I did call them and talk to them because they were part of that committee, and they have a vested interest themselves as an organization in providing service dogs and training them. So I saw that as a little bit disconcerting because of the dysfunctional state of that team. So I would just like to ask you, in that funding that was provided to them, they did use it to develop their own program, and also did provide some funding to other organizations, but not to all. And so, again, I see that we really need to come up with standards that are fair across this nation for all of the providers. And, sir, I would just like to ask you if you can guarantee, not knowing what will work best and hopefully looking at our recommendations, we need a standards board that is arm's length to take information from our veterans in these organizations, but that decision making has to happen outside of the veteran service dog funding communities. So can you assure me that that standards board will be arm's length from VAC and from the providers of service dogs?
Thank you very much. I think the chair is going to let me take the floor.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Were you concerned about Wounded Warriors and the funding they received? I just want to clarify that.
Well, I understand that you gave them funding in the midst of the whole process of that particular standards committee falling apart, is what I was told. And so they received funding, but he also did say that we're very excited about developing a program ourselves, which at that point then puts them in a situation where they don't have arm's length either. They are have vested interest in the programming and in the providing of service dogs. And the standard board has to be separate from the individuals and organizations that have a vested interest themselves.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Of course, what we are going to try to do, and I'll let the deputy elaborate on this, but what we're going to do is to, you're going to look at this at the committee. You're going to bring witnesses forward. You're going to have recommendations. We need that. And we look forward to your recommendations, and we look forward to putting the standards in place. But it has been an issue that has... we want to see national standards, and we have to look at the best way of
thank you, Minister. I want to give my colleague an opportunity, but just want to again assure that these will be done at arm's length without intervention directly from service dog providers. Okay, I will concede my time to my colleague.
Okay, Mr. Fraser told me about 1.5 minutes, please.
Well, I can talk fast. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Thank you for your presentation earlier on. Reading through some notes here, the department is, or your department is receiving significantly less in this year's main estimates compared to last year. Is that because Veterans Affairs didn't spend everything it was allotted last year? And if so, do you think that the unspent money could have gone towards addressing the backlog and addressing the imbalance between services offered between men, women, Anglophones, Francophones, or any number of issues this committee has raised over the last several months?
Thank you very much, and a good question. One I'm asked every time I come. I think we understand that these are estimates, and as I indicated previously in a response, there has been, example, $140 million allocated since the estimates in order to make sure we hire more people. And of course, when they start approving applications, that's going to mean more dollars still. In the end, I can assure you, my good colleague, is that there will always be the dollars there to make sure whatever remuneration is allocated to a veteran, there will always be the dollars there to make sure that is done. And I would say there will always be dollars that will be refunded back to Treasury from that particular program, because you have to always make sure you can't estimate to the dollar. You have to make sure you have money there. And we always will. I can assure you that.
Thank you, Minister McCauley. And for the last intervention for 5 minutes, I'd like to invite the PS of VAC, Mr. Daryl Sanson. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being with us today. And we heard some really good stories about the work you people have done in your visit in Europe, of course, in Juno Beach, and thank you for that work. A couple of very important things I want to lay out. One, is to thank you for the hard work in getting monies through the budget for Veteran Affairs. I think people forget sometimes the role that ministers play because we needed 140 million to keep the employees in place so that we could make headway on the wait time. And we needed 140 million to help veterans with mental health. And that, as you know, the program that was announced on April 1st, so important, it's immediate. Can you talk to us a little bit about those two major investments?
Oh, I am unmuted. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have the floor.
Yes.
Yes, the 104, you have to be careful of the chair. The $140 million for mental health is, I know all colleagues around the table fully support that. And most of them, the 140 for staff, vitally important, which means that we will be approving more applications. But of course, I can go in at length and say we have no control about the applications. We have no control at what comes in. We just have to deal with everything that comes in. On the mental health side, I want to be sure, and I'm sure everybody at the table understands too, when you apply for certain mental health programs, immediately you have access to funding. This is so vitally important. We know the problems surrounding mental health, and this was I felt it pretty important, and I'm sure the committee fully agrees with me that this type of funding is so important so people can get help. We know what happens so many times, so many horrible stories about what takes place in mental health. So this money is allocated, they can access it, they can start receiving hopefully some treatment right away. That is what's vitally important, and I thank you for that. I should have mentioned that too, but I forgot.
No, Minister, thank you. And it was nice seeing the large number of people, including MPs and yourself and the Minister of D&D at the Sam Sharp reception for mental health on Tuesday morning for breakfast. A quick question on veterans employment strategy. I think this is really important for those veterans who leave the forces Canada is CAP leaving the forces. That strategy is important. Can you talk to us about your vision around that? Because I've talked to, like, for Irving in shipbuilding in Halifax, they have a cohort. They're looking at hiring more veterans. We need to do more to help veterans in the transition. Can you talk a little bit about what you see in the veterans employment strategy that's in your mandate letter?
Well, the veterans employment strategy is a vitally important thing, not only, of course, for the veteran, but also for society and industry in general. What I find is so many things. I think I mentioned it once, the education program. Many people are not accessing that. That's there for people to upgrade themselves to be more valuable. Every walk of life is in the military. Every walk of life wants to do things, or most everybody does, and this gives them the opportunity to upgrade. I think, and I haven't, virtually I have, but really walking around like these career fair programs that we had, that's a prime example of what industry is looking for in the veterans field. And it also gives an opportunity for, I think it would be fair to say, for Veterans Affairs Canada and for the committee and for anybody else, in fact, what we actually need to be doing to get these people back into a meaningful job. The education program, and I'm a bit older, but I wasn't around then, but after the Second World War, these things were put in place, and it gave poor people that had no chance at all to become engineers, doctors, lawyers, and all this. What it does is gives those people a chance to be so valuable to society. That's why these programs are so vitally important, and that's why the career fairs are important, to fully understand what is required. And we're doing our best to understand that. But again, we're open to the committee for recommendations, and we just want to do better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. I think we may have a few seconds, but just to finish off, he says, but on the education training, I spoke to a couple of universities in Nova Scotia. We need to try to get the communication between our department and the universities across Canada to try to give more information and get as many veterans that want to do some education training those opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. It's pretty. It's not overly complicated. 6 years, 40,000. at 12 years, 80,000. It's available for upgrading your skills. It's so important that this is used.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
that's
so
chairman
much.
again.
Oh, yes, Mr. Macaulay, I have no choice, but now I'd like to thank you so much for being here in the committee and answering all questions. Et je veux vous dire aussi.
I would also like to tell you, Minister, that this is also your committee, so don't hesitate to visit us again. The chair is not mean. He just has to be a good timekeeper to make sure that all the members can participate.
And I'd like to invite Mr. Ledwell to stay with us. I know that you're going to leave, Mr. Macaulay. So on behalf of the committee and myself, I have once again to thank you for your appearance in the committee today. Thank you so much.
It was kind of fun with you, Mr. Chair. Take care. Appreciate it so much. You certainly keep a firm hand on the thing, and that's good. Take care and thank everybody. Thank you for your
so
help.
much.
For your help.
Thank you a lot. And members of the committee, I'm going to suspend for 4 to 5 minutes in order to permit the other witnesses to be there at the meeting. So the committee is suspended for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Let's resume the meeting. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
The witnesses. When you are ready to speak, you can click on your microphone to activate your mic. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Les services d'interprétation.
The interpretation services offered for this video conference are more or less the same as those offered during regular committee meetings. So at the bottom of your screen, you can choose between the floor, English, or French. And when you speak, please speak slowly and clearly. When you're not speaking, please mute your microphones. I would now like to welcome our witnesses.
Foreign Affairs, we have Mr. Stephen Harris, Assistant Deputy Minister, Service Delivery Branch, Mrs. Sarah Lenz, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, Chief Financial Officer and Corporate Services Branch, and Mrs. Amy Meunier, Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy and Commemoration. Je pense qu'il n'y a pas de...
I don't think there are any texts for you to read, so we will move directly to questions. And it is now Mr. Frank Caputo's turn, and you have 6 minutes. I would also ask committee members to please address the question to one of the 3 witnesses who are with us this afternoon. Mr. Caputo, you have 5 minutes.
And it's a pleasure to see all of our witnesses here today. I believe I was on a phone call with them yesterday and had the pleasure and honor of traveling with them, with 2 of them. So it's wonderful to see them again, Mr. Chair. I'm going to pick up on a question that I asked the minister and just ask, this would likely be to the Deputy Minister and to the Assistant Deputy Minister, whichever feels free to answer it, is with respect to the $139 million that was to deal with the backlog and the staff, and that money was spread over 2 years. But has the money that was earmarked for 2022 been distributed, as in have all the contracts that needed to be renewed to address the backlog been renewed?
Mr. Chair, I'll start off if that's okay, and I'll
yes.
Ask my colleague Stephen Harris to also weigh in this. But yes, Mr. Caputo, the funds that were identified were very, very important in terms of the timeliness to allow us to extend contracts for those who were already in place. We did see a number of our staff members leave during a period of time. So there is a process to hire back as well, or hire in to ensure that we've got the complement that is needed. And that's a process that is underway right now while all the processing is taking place. So on the one hand, it allowed for a confirmation and extension of the bulk of the contracts that the people, our staff members were already there. But there were a number that we're hiring in, and perhaps Stephen can give some detail on that. All of the funds are identified. All of the funds are being expended. All of the work is necessarily being undertaken and is showing some real return on this investment. But Stephen can give some further detail on this. Stephen?
Thanks, Deputy. It is almost essentially all salary dollars that has been funded as part of the $140 million. So as the Deputy indicated, we've renewed those people who were temporarily with us with contracts expected to expire, or term employment expected to expire at March 31st of this year. And in the cases where we have vacancies because the people had left for other or permanent employment elsewhere, we've started the process of hiring additional folks. That would include nurses and others who help us with the disability adjudication decisions. And we're putting those people in place and making sure they're trained as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Perhaps this about how many adjudicators are we down now?
So adjudicators are a particular position amongst the overall capacity of individuals. So adjudicators are typically nurses, although we have other people who help in the disability adjudication process, preparing claims, making sure that they're paid as well as part of the process. I think we were down about 50 nurses at the end of the 2-year period that just ended, and so we are in the midst of already hiring back those nurses at this point in time.
Now, does this, two questions in there related, are we still on track? I believe that the department had forecasted the backlog to be at about 9,000 disability benefit applications by the end of June. Are we on track to meet that?
Apologies. Our forecast is for about 9,500 in the backlog, those beyond our 16-week service standard in November of this year. We do expect to get to about 5,000 by the end of this fiscal year. In other words, at the end of March of 2023.
Okay, and we are on track then for those estimates?
Correct, and the benefit that we have right now is that we've got a large number and complement of trained staff who were working as of day one of April 1st, 2022, to continue the work of reducing the backlog. As the minister noted, we've cut the backlog number in half in the last little bit, so we are down now under 11,000, and we'll continue that work and that progress.
Oh, perfect. I appreciate that. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have, please?
1 minute and a half.
Okay, thank you. When we received some statistics here, and I'm just turning to them, about median wait times and average wait times. And the median wait time and the average will obviously be affected kind of by outlier cases. What number of cases at the disability adjudication stage are typically settled within, say, 16 weeks?
And so I can give you an exact figure on that. So for 21-22, the fiscal year that just ended, the number of applications that were completed within the 16-week service standard was 54%. That's up from 36% the year before, so up about 18% from the year previous. And again, that reflects the additional capacity that we've had to be able to make decisions more quickly. So 54% is still well short of our service standard of 80% of applications processed within that 16-week service standard. And that's reflective of the volume and the backlog that we've had. But we are getting to, and we will be getting to a position where we'll be able to make and get to that standard of 80% of decisions being made within the 16-week service standard. But we've made some good strides over the course of the last year. And again, in much the same way, I expect that to continue this year.
Okay, I think my time is probably up. Thank you.
Yes, exactly, Mr. Caputo. Et j'aimerais inviter Monsieur Sean Casey.
Just so, Mr. Caputo, I now invite Mr. Sean Casey. You have to take the floor. You have 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Casey.
To the senior bureaucrats of the Department of Veterans Affairs, special welcome to Ms. Mounier, and congratulations to her on her promotion to these ranks. I'll start with an easy one. The Associate Deputy Minister position, has that been filled on a permanent or interim basis yet?
Mr. Chair, if I could, Mr. Casey, no, yes. It is not. That position still remains vacant. As you may know, and the committee might know, this is a government and council appointment, so it goes through that process. And has a decision yet been made as to whether that position will be based at the national headquarters or in Ottawa? No decision taken on that yet. Okay. Certainly some identification, but no decision.
Okay, thank you. In the briefing notes that we received from the Library of Parliament in preparation for today's meeting, there's a reference to the full-time equivalents at Veterans Affairs, and it indicates that this year there's an expectation that VAC will have 3,106 full-time equivalents, which is a decrease from the current year, 21-22, of 566. So the plan over the next 12 months is, as I understand it, or if the information I've received is correct, is to decrease the workforce at VAC by 566 full-time equivalents. Where will those reductions come from?
If I could, Mr. Chair, I believe, Mr. Casey, that those numbers reflect the fact that when those figures were produced, there was no conception of our service excellence work continuing. So the positions that we've just spoken about in terms of the reinvestment, the $140 million in staff, were not reflected in those numbers. I might ask my colleague Sarah Lance to speak to our FTE overall component. But I can tell you that there's no current plan to decrease our numbers at Veterans Affairs Canada, but to maintain those numbers and to ensure that we're maintaining the service for veterans. But perhaps Sarah can speak to our FTE complement.
Yeah, please go ahead, Mrs. Lentz.
Yes, thank you. So the Deputy Minister is correct. It's not reflecting the extension of our recent terms beyond fiscal year 21-22. I think currently our FTE count is around 3,600. It's always a little bit below or above that with the service excellence complements, and it was up to 599 being extended through service excellence. 168 previously were, so a little over 400 would come in with that new funding.
Thank you for that. The information that I've cited comes from the departmental plan 2022-2023, which indicates an expectation of 3,105 full-time equivalents.
Excuse me, Mr. Casey. Could you just lower a little bit your microphone? Yes. Okay, please.
Better, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chair?
Yeah, that's good.
The information that I have comes from the departmental plan 2022-2023, indicating 3,100 full-time equivalents in the upcoming year, and that it is a decrease from the current year. It also indicates that it does take into account the 200 temporary human resources positions that will be kept on as the initiative to address the backlog. So I guess what I would ask you is if after this meeting, you go back and review the departmental plan and you have some additional or changed information to answer my question, I'd appreciate receiving it in writing, because it is, with respect, completely at odds with the information that we're receiving from the Library of Parliament. My next question also relates directly to the estimates, and the pain and suffering compensation contained in the estimates is just north of 1.5 billion. But that represents a 35% increase, a 35% decrease from last year, a decrease of $812 million. There doesn't appear to be any explanation for why there would be a 35% increase in pain and suffering compensation. Can you provide us with one?
Mr. Chair, if I could, the nub of that, Mr. Casey, is that when the estimates were produced at the end of last calendar, beginning of this calendar year, it did not incorporate the investment of the service excellence positions and funding around the supports for that, nor did it incorporate the expectation of the payment of supports, the decision of supports, and thus the payment of supports that would result as through that increased investment in staff complement to allow for the processing. So that really is the overwhelming amount that is the difference between the estimates that you have before you, and we should anticipate that those estimates will be readjusted through this coming calendar year.
Okay, thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. For the next 6 minutes, I would invite Luc Desilets to take the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, Mr. Harris, Mr. Ledwell, and Ms. Meunier. I'll continue in the same vein As Mr. Fraser, I don't understand why in the departmental plan 22-23 there's a decrease in employees. I understand that information will be sent to all committee members to inform us of that, because I'd have a series of sub-questions. Who will be affected? Will the new positions put in place for Francophones be affected by this, etc.? Unless you have something to add, Mr. Ledwell, on that.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, just to say that with Mr. Casey's question, we'll go back to the departmental plans and clarify exactly why there is that difference. So we'll do that, Mr. Desilets, and determine exactly why there's a difference between what's presented with the numbers you have. So plans that have changed due to amounts confirmed in the budget, in the estimates. Great. There's something we haven't been able to agree on. The decrease in the number of requests from Francophones. I've looked at numbers from all angles. There's a wait time of 40 to 60 weeks for Francophones. I'm very visual. Perhaps I'm not understanding something. So I made a little chart, and I'd like to share it with you eventually. For the wait times for Francophones, Anglophones, men, women, etc., because it's even easier to understand it this way. So since 2018, it's been the same. I hear there are actions that have been taken, and we would see the results in a few months. Is that true, Mr. Ledwell? Am I to understand it that way? Yes, I can tell you that it's true. There's an improvement. But we hear you. It's important to be clear. Clear on the history, clear on the results to date, and clear on what we expect in the future as well. I can ask Mr. Harris to add details on that. We've discussed it a lot here at the department. We want to ensure there are improvements on this. So, Mr. Harris, Stephen? Thank you, Paul. I'd like to try to answer your question quickly and say at the outset that you've asked the question on Francophone employees hired to help us with the challenge of wait times. We will keep them on. I just want to confirm that, first of all. Second, regarding improvements for wait times, I can tell you that it's true. From 2020-21 to 2021-22, we've seen a net improvement of the average for all prior requests from Francophones. It was a 7-week reduction on average. So that's a net improvement. There's a lot more to do still. It's still 45 weeks on average. We have a lot of work to do. But as I've said at this committee before or in other discussions, in all of the backlogs, we had a lot of Francophone applications that had been there a long time. So when we make decisions on those applications that were there for a long time, it has an impact on our averages. What you'll see when we go forward with the workforce we have now is that there will be improvements in those gaps between Francophone and Anglophone applications. Excellent. I look forward to seeing that. We all want to see an improvement. We're all working toward the same goal. For a number of months, I've seen that we don't use the same terms for the data before us, and it would be in everyone's interest to be specific. When we talk about numbers for backlogs for first applications, it creates confusion. When I asked about the 77 weeks a month or two ago, I know I'm running out of time. How much do I have left, Mr. Chair? 45 seconds. Quickly, I want to draw your attention to something that jumps out at me. In a document from the department, the total number of disability benefit applications. So we have columns about those that need additional information. When we look at the last quarter, there are 12,000 applications that are incomplete. And those that are ready, there are 2,000. So I'd like us to have a look at that difference. 12,000 that are incomplete when there are 2,000. Is it because this system is too complex? The bureaucracy isn't able to deal with all of this? The IT system? There are 6 times more. So it's not a question, but it's a comment. There are 6 times the number of applications that are incomplete. It's a waste of time for our public servants, and it's a waste of time for our veterans. Okay. I just had to let you know that time is up. So now we will continue. I will ask Rachel Blaney to take the floor for 6 minutes, please. Go ahead.
And thank you to all of you for being here today. My first question is on the Office of Women and LGBTQ2 Veterans. I'm just wondering if you could tell the committee how much is in the budget for this office and how many staff are working in this office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, I'm going to ask Ms. Blaney if my colleague Stephen Harris could address that issue, because it's an office that he works with very closely.
I always want to hear from Mr. Harris. Thank you.
And I don't mean to pass as well, but actually Ms. Meunier would be best positioned to give you the
answer
answer
the
on
question.
Okay. Ms. Meunier, well, okay, you're going to answer no. You're not going to pass it to no. Okay, please.
No. First, I just wanted to thank the chair and the committee for having me here. I hope the more I come, the more comfortable it will all feel. Thank you for the question, Ms. Blaney. There are about 6. I'm new into my role here, but there are about 6 substantive employees in that office. There are others who support the effort throughout the department, not on a full-time basis, but as we undertake initiatives, whether that is research, in-service delivery in the corporate services area. So it is about 5 to 6 full-time employees.
All right, and I did ask about the budget, so I'm going to ask for that again. But I also am curious, what are some of the current research projects that this office is working on? And just to preface that, if you don't have an answer for me, if you could get that information to the committee.
Sure. I don't have the specific dollar amount associated with that office, but as I'm sure I might have it here somewhere in the background of my notes. I might look to the research elements first. We are focused on looking towards disaggregated data and better understanding elements associated with veteran marginalized or vulnerable populations such as women or LGBTQ2. So we are, as part of our research agenda, really focusing on those areas over the next year and a half.
Okay, well, I will look forward to hearing more specifics. I understand you're looking into those groups, but it would be interesting to hear what are those key issues that you're finding and addressing. My next question is about the VAC's new rehab contract. Once this program starts, will veterans be able to continue to see their own psychiatrists, medical professionals, or will they be forced to have to go to a provider sourced by the professional? Maybe I'll give that to Mr. Ledwell. Mr. Ledwell? It's hard not to call you Paul.
Thank you, Ms. Blaney. Thank you, and Mr. Chair, if I could. This is an important undertaking, of course, because it ensures that that veterans have access to the supports that they need, medical, psychological, and other supports. And the intention with this is to ensure that they have the supports in the locations where they need it as well, through means that are provided. So through their personal provisions, but also to fill in gaps where it is not possible and sometimes challenging for veterans to get access. So we also build provisions to allow for access to specialists through these kinds of programs. And I will ask Mr. Harris if he could
no, that's okay.
provide
I'll
some
let
detail.
that one go. Maybe the next question will have Mr. Harris answer. But I'm trying to figure this out because I know that there is a pilot that VAC is running right now, and when this happens, what I'm hearing is that the case manager doesn't finish working with the veteran. Instead, the veteran is pushed into guided support given by a veteran service agent. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is what is the difference between these two roles? What are the checks and balances to make sure that when that person is moved out of case management and into guided support that they are still doing well? And I guess I'm just curious because it sounds to me like this is really pushing people through the system. So I'm wondering, is there a bonus paid to the provider to get the veterans off those services sooner? And if there is a bonus, what does that look like?
So thanks again for the question, and maybe I can just provide a bit of an answer. So the case manager and the veteran service agent actually work together. And so people who are in a case management situation are usually going through a rehabilitation program. So
just so you know, Mr. Harris, that's not what I'm hearing at all. So I'm surprised that you're saying that. So I'm just putting that on the record. That is not at all what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that they leave the case manager and they go to the veteran service agent, and there is no continuation of care between the two.
So they do work together. It is a continuum of care with respect to how Veterans Affairs manages it. And so the case manager, when a veteran is going through a rehabilitation program, they are assigned a case manager. As the veteran completes the rehabilitation program, in other words, achieves the goals that have been set out as part of that program, the case manager will have discussions with them around, where they're at in terms of their rehabilitation. If they've achieved those goals and can be self-sufficient, and there are a number of checks and balances in the course of having that conversation.
Could we get a copy of what those checks and balances are? Those would be really helpful. And then just if you go, I've only got a few seconds left. Is there a bonus paid to the provider that is there to show that veterans get off the services sooner?
No, there's no bonus. There's a bit of a mix in terms of what you're asking in terms of a rehabilitation service contract with some specialists that help above and beyond the rehabilitation and the discussions that happen with the case manager.
Okay, thank you. Merci, Madame Blaney.
Thank you, Ms. Blaney. Your 6 minutes are up. Okay, committee members. Mr. Ledwell had to leave with the minister, but he stayed for the beginning of this second portion of the meeting to answer a few questions, but unfortunately, he has to leave. So on behalf of committee members and on behalf of myself, I'd like to thank Paul Ledwell, the Deputy Minister.
So thank you for being with us this afternoon, Mr. Ledwell, and on va continuer avec.
We'll continue with our other three witnesses. We're in good hands with Mr. Harris, Ms. Meunier, and Ms. Lance. So I will now ask Anna Roberts to take the floor for the next 5 minutes. Go ahead, Ms. Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question. I'm trying to understand this. So it was stated that there's 3,600 employees. We have 11,000 backlogs. Each case takes, maybe I'm misunderstanding this, so help me please, 45 weeks from start to finish. Is that correct?
On average last year, the first applications that came in, the average turnaround time was 38 weeks.
So if we take 11,000 backlogs and divided maybe let me take a step back. So 3,600 employees, how many of those employees are caseworkers?
I beg your pardon, how many are what?
How many of the 3,600 employees are caseworkers?
Of the 3,600 employees, there's 476 caseworkers. The caseworkers don't work on the disability adjudication claims, though.
So if we have 476 caseworkers and we have 11,000 backlogs, we're not going to get through this, in my estimation. Is that correct?
Again, you're somewhat mixing two different elements. So we have about 15,000 veterans who are undergoing a rehabilitation program. They're served by case managers. They're served by the 476 case managers. Of the 11,000 files that are in backlog, we have a separate unit that is responsible for disability adjudication. It consists of any number of folks who work on both the intake of those applications, the review and processing of those applications, and the payment of those applications. So it's not the caseworkers who actually work on those particular files.
So if it takes 38 weeks to come up with a decision to help our veterans, would you say that that's a reasonable amount of time?
According to our service standard, it's clearly not a reasonable amount of time, and that's why the government has invested additional resources to be able to help us process those in the backlog, reduce the backlog, which we've been able to do by about 50% over the course of the last 18 months or so, and get it to a state where we'll be in a position to meet our service standard of 16 weeks for a disability adjudication decision 80% of the time.
So you want to reduce it from 38 weeks to 16 weeks. So how many?
That's our published service standard, yes.
Okay. So how many caseworkers or how many individuals are we going to need over and above what we currently have to get to that standard?
So the minister and the deputy spoke about this in the first hour with the additional hiring, and so the $140 million that we've been speaking about earlier is to hire additional disability adjudication processing staff. And so over the course of the next 2 years and the past 2 years, we've hired overall another 518 people above our existing complement to be able to help us reduce the wait times and reduce the files that are pending beyond our service standard. So with the 518 folks that we've been able to add for another 2 years, I'm confident that we are going to continue to reduce the backlog and have many, many more of those files adjudicated within the 16-week service standard.
And I'm sorry for pounding on this. I come from a business world where FTEs are very important because, you know, we plan for it, we budget for it. So I need to understand this because it's a little confusing. So we have 518 new employees on top of the 476 new employees to help with the backlog. Am I understanding that?
Not quite. So the 518 employees are on top of existing disability adjudication staff. I don't have the existing disability adjudication staff in front of me. One of my colleagues might be able to help me, but it's 518 additional to disability adjudication. And the 476 case managers that you're referring to is a separate sort of line of business. Everybody works towards the benefit and the well-being of the veteran, but it's a bit of a separate business item.
So how long, with your estimation of the FTEs, will it take to ensure that this backlog is finally dealt with?
We are projecting that we'll be down to about 5,000 files beyond our 16-week service standard at the end of this fiscal year. What we'd like to be able to do is make sure that we can maintain the 16-week service standard 80% of the time, which is the service standard, for at least a year to declare that we've actually accomplished what we've set out to do, which is get back to meeting our service standard and reducing wait times for veterans who've applied. So, I think within a year we'll be down under 5,000. There will never be zero beyond the 16-week service standard because it is a 16-week service standard 80% of the time. Sometimes files take longer because of a need to get additional medical information. They're incomplete, and a process that must be put in place to help support those individuals.
I think my time is up.
Merci, exactly.
Oui, merci, Madame Roberts. Thank you.
Prochaine minute.
For the next 5 minutes, I would like to let Mr. Wilson Miao take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and for today's meeting. I'd like to ask a question regarding on the offices, because over the last 2 years, I understand offices across the nation serving our veterans have been closed due to the pandemic. Is there a current timeline on when are these offices will be reopened to service our veterans?
maybe I can take that question to start, and then maybe my colleague Sarah Lance would like to join in. Obviously, the offices have been closed as a result of the COVID pandemic for the safety of veterans and for the safety of Veterans Affairs employees. What I would offer is that even before the pandemic, the vast majority of our interactions with veterans was done virtually via the phone, via our online service, MyVac account, and others. While we have offices across the country, not everybody needed to come into the office, and not everybody wanted to come into the office. So we had a very extensive virtual network even before this. Been able to enhance that over the course of the last little while. But to specifically your question, we are starting the reoccupancy of our offices across the country at lower level amounts to start, making sure that we're in keeping with local health provisions and things of that nature. So we'll have people back in the offices this month and next, and then expanding with additional capacity in the resource in the offices in the months of July and August, and starting up with by appointment visits from veterans during that time frame as well. So sometime in July and August, the offices will take appointments from veterans to come in and see them.
And do you feel by reopening these offices will help with the backlog and allow VAC to serve our veteran and meet the 80% of the 16-week service standard?
I don't know that the opening of the offices specifically has an impact on the ability of the department to meet the backlog. What it does allow us to do is provide another opportunity to provide in-person service to veterans, to be able to meet them. We've been doing that virtually through things like Zoom and MS Teams to be able to assess their needs and speak with them and address any concerns that they have. But it's always good for our case managers, our frontline staff to be able to see veterans in person, to be able to talk to them. They can bring in concerns that they have as well. So it's another service channel that provides improved service.
Great, thank you. And earlier, Mr. Ledwell mentioned that 34% of last year's budget went to service excellence. And my question is, what is service excellence going towards, whether it's salary or made out as payment? And can we have a breakdown of how that portion of the budget was spent? And further to that, is the 34% not being spent this year that is available to be spent in other areas?
Sarah, did you want to take that question?
Yeah, so thank you for your question. The service excellence is the term that we use for the hiring of the additional staff to tackle the backlog majorly. So in the previous 2 years, it was the 518 directly to support addressing the backlog, 518 new employees. There is a small portion that we've also dedicated in previous years to automation, to some innovation on automating some of our process and gaining some efficiencies in the process, so that, as Mr. Harris mentioned earlier, that as we tackle the backlog and reduce it to a manageable level, that we can sustain that into the future, not just with manpower, but through technology. As far as the continuing the percentage of spending, we expect, because of the extension of those 518 employees into this new fiscal year, that they're all fully up and trained. They will have a few new employees because of some of the departures that we experienced, but they're expecting that the same percentage of spending on the backlog, if that was your question.
Great, thank you. And I understand with the 140 million budget allowing VAC to hire more staff to address to the backlog, do you feel if there's any other area that we can look into to minimize that process and speed it up so that we can help more veterans throughout the process, not just only by hiring more staff?
It's a really great question, and so I'm happy to reassure you and the committee as a whole, Mr. President, that that's exactly what we're doing, Mr. Chair, sorry. That's exactly what we're doing. We're working through innovation and automation in all aspects of the disability adjudication process to make sure that if there are system changes that we can make that make it easier, to the earlier point that the other member made around incomplete applications, if there's things that we can do to help veterans make sure that they are able to do that, there's a range of additional measures that we're taking beyond just the additional staff being brought in to help with reduction of the backlog.
Great. Thank you very much.
Merci, Monsieur Miao.
Thank you, Mr. Miao. And now we are going to have two quick questions. So first, there will be Mr. Luc Desilets for 2.5 minutes. Mr. Desilets. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Ms. Meunier. I am sure that she probably has a very smart answer to my question. So let's go back to the backlog for people who are waiting for disability payments. So I saw that there were about 2,000 requests, but there are 12,000 requests that are incomplete. So, Ms. Meunier, do you have any answers that could help me understand why there's a major gap?
I'm happy to take this question, although it does fall under my colleague's responsibility now. We actually undertook, you're right to say that is a large volume of applications that are incomplete. The incompleteness of it can range from missing a signature, sections not filled out, medical questionnaires missing. So there's a range of reasons an application might be incomplete. We did undertake a consultation with veterans just recently through our Let's Talk Veteran platform to better understand what is happening and why we're receiving so many incomplete applications. And there were a number of findings, and I think I might have touched on this briefly the last time I was here. Many applicants didn't know about my VAC account, which does have opportunity to prompt people and remind them to fill out each section. Additionally, we may have thought we were providing sufficient amount of information in a clear and easy to understand manner upfront in terms of the full process for applying. I think that consultation has helped us see we need to do a better job of clearly laying out the process. And so those are some of the insights into why we do see so many applications. We are also taking steps at the front end with our intake officers to try and reduce and identify early on incomplete applications so individuals can be made aware there are missing pieces of information in 1 to 2 weeks versus a much longer or protracted period of time.
Si je peux, j'aimerais ajouter.
I would also like to add something. Go ahead. You have about 15 to 20 seconds, Mr. Harris. Yes, I just want to clarify something really quickly. So we don't just have 2,000 requests that were fully processed compared to the 11 or 12,000 that were not processed. So yes, there are about 11,000 requests that were processed, but there are about 15,000 requests that are at the decision-making stage. And incomplete applications, I think that there's about 12,000 of them. Thank you, Mr. Harris. And now, Mr. Desilets, you will have the chance to ask another question during the next round. And now, Ms. Rachel Blaney, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
So I guess my question has to go to Mr. Harris now. Always enjoy that, as he well knows. I'm wondering if he could tell us what the standard of care for veterans is with this new rehab contract, and if we could have a copy of the standards of care.
And so I'm not specifically clear on the standards of care. The new contract is not yet in place. It will only go into place in November. We're in an interim period whereby the existing contract is still being used, and there'll be a transitional element to the new contract that was procured. But in terms of the operations of the contract and in terms of the kinds of expectations that we would have of the contractor, I'd be happy to share that with you.
All right, I'll let you know if I like it, and if I want something else, I'm sure you'll hear from our office, as you know. So in the conclusion pilot, I'm just wondering, I want to go back to this. What is the process of determining when the veteran moves from case management to a veteran service agent? You talked a little bit about what you were looking for, but I also know that sometimes people do better for a while and then they struggle again. So I'm just wondering about how that relationship works between those two roles, and if the veteran has to see a new person. So this is something that I'm very concerned about, is that, you know, a veteran has a case manager or may have a veteran service agent. Something changes, they have to go back to the case manager. Do they have to go back to a new one, or do they get to stay with the one that they already know, and vice versa as they move through the transition period?
I'll try and answer as quickly as I can. There's a couple of questions there. Very quickly, in terms of conclusion, what we want to see is that the veteran successfully met his rehabilitation goals or her rehabilitation goals, and that they're in a good place, that their well-being is assured. It doesn't mean that they will not need assistance from Veterans Affairs in the future, that they may not need to call in and get some guidance or seek additional supports, but they don't need the high level of touch that a case manager is able to provide. With respect to whether they can come back, of course they can come back. If their needs change and their needs need to be reassessed, and they need to come back to a case managed type situation, that's a possibility. Whether they would go back to the exact same one will depend on, you know, the caseloads in those offices, whether those case managers are still there.
Can I ask, though, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I only
things.
have 10 seconds, but have you done any work on what happens to a veteran when they have to retell their story to whoever they're getting the supports from? We definitely heard about this for caseworkers not understanding about what happened to the queer community prior to that. So I'm just wondering, is there any research within your department around that specifically, what it does to veterans when they have to retell their stories to yet another worker?
I wouldn't say there's specific research in this case. There is a lot of evidence, as you've noted, that people can become frustrated having to respond or tell their story again. It's known, and so that's why we try and minimize it and ensure that there's consistency in terms of the supports for veterans.
Merci, Madame Blédé, Monsieur Harris. Je voudrais inviter.
Thank you, Ms. Blaney and Mr. Harris. And now I would ask Ms. Kathy Morgenthau to, you have 5 minutes. Please turn on your mic.
Really pleased to have you here. I have a number of questions, 10 of them. Don't let it scare you off. They should be fairly succinct answers to these. First question, who would I get the best results from in asking about specifically VAC's Benefits Navigator tool? Are you familiar with it?
I could answer those questions, yes.
Yeah, and Ms. Menier as well. Menier? Okay, great. Can you tell me on what date it was established? And if you can't answer these right now, feel free to we'll keep the list and you can come back with the answers, that's fine.
I don't think I have the date that's established right with me, but it's been, I think, up for about 10 years.
Actually, I believe it was established just as this government took power in 2016. But regardless, so there's circumstances and decisions that led to it being established. Do you have any insight into how it came about?
It was actually a pilot project from the Veterans Ombudsperson's Office. Had originally set up and started to do work on on a benefits navigator. It was slightly different at the time. It's been enhanced by the department. The Ombudsperson's Office asked if we could take it over and actually make it a practical piece of our own published information.
That's a different perspective than what I was told by veterans when Deb Lowther came and spoke at committee and said, we need an entrance tool that veterans can use that can cover all the areas that they need to give information for to move things along in a very appropriate and faster way so that these backlogs don't develop. So my understanding was that this came actually from veterans themselves, a veteran particularly following an agreement prior to this government taking place. So since coming online, has it ever been taken offline? Just a yes or no?
Yeah, I think the only reason we'd be taken offline would be for maintenance or upgrades.
Okay, so not for long periods of time? Any idea? No? Okay, great. According to the webpage, I see that it was last modified on April 27th. Could you provide us with the details as to what changes were made and why?
I would have to come back with that. I expect it was updated to reflect the changes to the mental health benefit program that just came live on April 1st, but I would have to confirm.
Yeah, if you could, that would be excellent. So along the same lines, how has the navigator been changed over the years? What questions have been added or removed and why? Is there a history of that?
I'm not sure that there's a specific history, and I've been able to confirm it was 2014 when it was first launched. And so what it's there for is informational opportunities for veterans to be able to go on answer a few short questions, and get information about programs and services that they might be eligible and entitled for. And so that would have changed over the course of this period of time to reflect changes in programming. And so we've changed from a disability award to things like pain and suffering compensation, for example. So it would have been updated as programs changed.
So are veterans aware of when that happens? Because I've heard from them that it disappeared, that it wasn't available. So perhaps there's a communication problem there, maybe. In what ways has VAC gone about promoting the existence of this tool, the Benefits Navigator, to veterans?
I think it's promoted, and it has been promoted regularly through things like social media, in information that's gone out through things like a Salute newsletter. I can tell you that about 26,000 people have accessed this in the last 12 months.
Great. That was one of my questions. Perfect. Okay. So is it available on the MyVac account? Like as they sign up for a MyVac account, is it clearly there for them to use?
It's actually available in both places. So it's available through MyVac account, and it's also available on our website.
Okay. So you just shared with me, what did you say as far as how popular it's been with prospective applicants? Is it reused or just a one-time tool?
So it's 26,000 people have used it on my VAC account in the last 12 months. An additional 6,000 have used it on our website. And while we don't track specifically people coming back to use it again and again, because that's their data, we don't keep that data on hand.
Okay, let's see if I can make it through these. How many individual veterans have actually applied for benefits as a result of this? Is there any record of that type of information to know how beneficial it actually is?
I don't think there's a straight line connection that we can make to people doing that, but people would become aware of perhaps additional programs and services that they hadn't seen, and they could come forward and apply to those.
It would be great to maybe find out from veterans how many have actually received benefits recommended to them by the Navigator. I think that would be a good tool to determine how effective it's been. That's just a comment. Has the Navigator ever been a standard component of VAC's intake process for benefit applicants? So in this whole process of trying to streamline them, especially those first time, is there a concerted effort of the people employed at VAC to use it? Oh, no. I have one more question, Chair.
Yeah, but Mrs. Morgenthau, I'm sorry, but you know what? Your name is on the list for the next round. So you'll be able to ask questions for 5 more minutes.
Well, there you go. I did not know that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, you're welcome. So now I'd like to invite, let me see, Miss Richie Valdez for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to take the opportunity to cede my questions to MP from Bonavista, Buren Trinity, and then I will go after him. Thank you.
Okay, that's right. Let's go. Is it Mr. Charles? Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Welcome to the officials, and thank you for being with us today. I'm not sure want to answer this question, but I'll put it there for either of you to respond to. In a previous meeting, we had 2 constituents from my riding of Bonavista, Buren Trinity, Walter and Norma Pinson, appear and talk about the marriage after 60 issue. And Ms. Blaney was asking questions about that today, and I want to follow up with that because I've still got some concern about this, and when I asked Norma why she decided not to participate in the Survivor Pension Fund, she explained that she decided, after much consideration, not to participate in the program because, first of all, they were required to pay over $500+ a month to build up a pension fund for her, and which took a lot of money out of their retirement income. And secondly, she explained that if she passed before Walter, that they'd be out whatever money they put into the program. So they would get $0 back. I was a bit flabbergasted with that, quite frankly, and that's why I wanted to come back to this line of questioning, because what I'd like for the officials to outline for us, the committee, is outline for us the makeup of the survivor Survivor Pension Fund program. How was it designed? What is the end result here? And given what Norma said, I'm not surprised that she made the decision that she did. So I'd like for the officials, if they could, to comment on that Survivor Pension Fund program and how it was set up and outline some of the issues with it for the entire committee to understand.
Thank you for that question. For your clarification and Ms. Blaney's as well, the Canadian Armed Forces Superannuation Pension Plan, which includes that optional survivor benefit, doesn't fall within the jurisdiction of Veterans Affairs Canada. It is a superannuation plan led by our colleagues in the Canadian Armed Forces, along with Treasury Board Secretariat. And we will be coming back in a few weeks before this committee again, along with those partners. And they may be better positioned to describe the details and the evolution of that. So I would not have the historical information about the evolution of that element. So I just thought that was an important distinction, clarification to make. What I can say, though, is that the Government of Canada, through Veterans Affairs Canada, is very interested in making sure that families and survivors of veterans have the supports they need. Ms. Blaney mentioned earlier on that government did infuse money, and that's $150 million into a veteran survivor fund. And what we've done since that time is undertaken research along with Statistics Canada and the Canadian Institute for Military and Veteran Health Research. And we have some preliminary results, and when we come back in 2 weeks, hopefully we can dive into those a little more. What I can tell you about this group of individuals who may fall into to the category of marrying a member after the age of 60 is that there are about just under 5,000 living survivors who would have entered into a relationship post age 60. Virtually all were female. Most, approximately 90%, were at the age of 70 years or older. And overall, their incomes were just slightly higher than similarly aged Canadian females. So of that close to 5,000 individuals, there were approximately 850 who had incomes below the low income measure, and about 1,200 who were in receipt of the guaranteed income supplement. And so what we're looking at is taking this information, also taking into account that the increase to the old age security, which will come into effect in July of 22, which will infuse additional funds into those aged over 75. We want to take into account, what is the risk level of this population, so that we can put in place a program and supports that are meeting those needs. And so I hope to come back and talk with you more about that in the coming weeks with our partners.
Thank you,
Mrs.
Mrs.
I look forward to that particular visit. I'm still at
Thank you.
Time, Mr. Chair?
Yes, your time is up, so I'm so sorry, Mr. Rogers. So,
all right,
but I have
much.
to.
Thanks for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
I have to say that I just make the calculation of the time because we have to vote on the main estimate at the end of that meeting. But I have to tell Mrs. Wagenthal that I don't think that you're going to be able to intervene. I'm so sorry, but maybe that you can ask Mr. Tolmie or Frank Caputo to share time with them, and that's it. So, well, Mr. Fraser Tolmie, it's your time for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay, and I'll be very happy to share my time with Ms. Wagenthal. I have a couple of comments, and I know that Mr. Desolé circled back on the question that I brought up earlier on with regards to the spending. And I think one of the things that the minister brought up was that that there was always going to be money in the pot for remuneration. And if not, then it would be returned And so the question I have with that statement is, did we not have enough employees, and was there money returned based on that comment?
Thank you for the question. Just to clarify, I think by the word returned, when we establish benefits, or new benefits, or we make policy changes for a veteran program, we estimate the long-term obligation of meeting the needs of those programs. That estimate acts like kind of a bank account from which we draw on annually. So in the last fiscal year where we did lapse or have unspent money in the program area, that money is effectively returned to the bank account on which we can redraw when people do come forward for those benefits. So I believe that's what the minister was referring to when he said return. So that money does not effectively lapse. It may, lapse under the accounting terms and on our books, but it is available for veterans when they come forward.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lance. I appreciate that. And another observation is that we keep talking about full-time employees and this backlog. And what I kind of see in the time frame that I've been here is this accordion effect, where we are reacting and then there's an inconsistency that's created. And when we look at new hires, a previous witness has told us that it would take up to a year to recruit and train. So based on Mr. Harris's comments that we want to get this completed within 2 years, or the backlog down to 2 years, is it not fair to say that it would actually be 3 years as being the realistic goal? If you've got a year where you're training someone, and then you have them up and running, you actually have 2 good years with them afterwards. So is that not a better standard to set ourselves and be realistic, and rather than overpromise, underdeliver, but underdeliver and overpromise, vice versa?
Thank you for thank you for the question. I'll just make a one comment, and then maybe Mr. Harris will step in. A lot of the time when we were talking about the new funding, the $140 million just recently improved in budget 2022, we sometimes talked about hiring employees. The majority of those employees are being extended. So the majority of those employees have had their year training and are up to their productivity level that we expect. And so we have a more predictable level of what we'll need in funding and what they can produce to address the backlog. We did have some departures. You are right. That accordion effect of giving us temporary money for 2 years and then extending again for another year or 2 years, we do lose people because they find jobs elsewhere or don't want to go through this. So we do have some hiring and some training up to do, but we don't think it'll have a significant impact, but I would leave that to Mr. Harris to speak to.
I think my colleagues actually explained it quite well, and we've done significant work. Ms. Meunier, in a previous position, did amazing work to compress the amount of time required for training. It did used to be about a year to train somebody fully on all aspects of this. We've sort of targeted that training now so that it can be done much more quickly.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's all the time I have, folks.
Yes.
Ms. Weigenthal would like
Ms.
to.
Ms. Weigenthal, 1 minute and 15 seconds. Go ahead, please.
Sounds great. Then I'll talk to Frank. All right. So, Ms. Meunier, has the Navigator ever been a standard component of VAC's intake process for benefit applicants? I know that you're working hard to streamline and improve the way things work. Is it a tool that you encourage the new employees to use in working with veterans?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd answer that question and essentially say it is a similar intake process. It is the kind of thing that we walk through with veterans when we speak to them, whether that's through our client contact center, when they speak to people who are veteran service agents, or even in case managers. We do a bit of an intake process to see what their needs might be. And it's very similar to the process that's used there.
But why not just use one method so that there's consistency and ability to see how effective it is going through the process? But regardless, so is there a plan to integrate it as a mandatory first point of entry for all applicants, so that there is that consistency?
we encourage people to use it. And so lots of people are using it. And we encourage our Canadian Armed Forces members as they go through transition. We've integrated in much stronger way the kinds of transition tools that are in place that are available to Canadian Armed Forces members as they go through that transition process. And these are part of those tools.
Great. Okay. I'm just wondering, are veterans organizations that provide VAC-approved services and supports, are they informed about this Benefit Navigators tool online for veterans to use? Because it was pretty clear, like, Ms. Lowther with Vets Canada, who is very engaged, was not aware that this tool existed.
Well, I'll certainly follow up with Ms. Lowther. I know, for example, our veteran service officers that exist in the Legion use it quite regularly, as do some other stakeholders that help us in assisting with veterans.
Okay, thank you very much. That's good, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Wagenthal. My pleasure. Now, I would invite Richie Valdez for the next 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all of your time today. I've got a variety of questions, so bear with me. I'll try to direct it accordingly. So first, Mrs. Munier, congratulations on your new role. This year marks the 77th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands. Could you inform this committee on what kinds of commemorative events are being planned?
Yes, actually, I believe there's an event happening this weekend. As you know, we were just in the Netherlands as part of the delegation that the minister was just speaking about, and talking with a variety of organizations over there, along with our European operations, to do a number of local events in that region. There's also another event happening in Ottawa. And then there are smaller events happening across the country. Is there anything in particular or any event in particular? Okay.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Mr. Harris and Ms. Lance, I used to be a project and change manager for years supporting a North American call center. So I understand the challenges with training, consistency of services with staff, especially when there's just this huge high turnover. So we heard a lot of pain points when conversing with veterans from the LGBTQ community or organizations that support them. So could you shed some light on how you coach your team that service them and what steps you're taking to make it more fair for LGBTQ veterans?
Yeah, there's lots of things that we do with respect to training, and thanks for pointing out the requirement to do this and do it well. We've learned lots of things over the course of stakeholder consultations. Ms. Munier spoke earlier about the Office of Women and LGBTQ2 that do extensive stakeholder consultations. We have a stakeholder team that speaks regularly with members from a broad spectrum of communities, including the LGBTQ2 community. And so over the course of a number of class action settlements, through the Canadian Armed Forces, the Purge settlement from the public service point of view, Merlo Davidson with respect to the RCMP. We've trained our staff, and we actually set up a dedicated unit to be able to respond to claims that were coming in with respect to these class actions. And that training and the experience that they've had in terms of interacting with members of perhaps communities that have been affected or impacted from military sexual trauma, Purge, or other things has been expanded and extended to other frontline staff as well. So the experience that they've had in terms of learning how some of these concerns are being brought forward from the veteran community are now being used to help case managers, our veteran service agents, our call center employees as well, to make sure that that could be spread and that experience and that sensitivity can be brought entirely through the organization.
Yeah, we heard that quite a bit from the witnesses. It's really the empathy that's really needed when having conversations, especially because a lot of it is bringing up a lot of their pains from the past. So thank you for that. Switching gears, so a substantial part of the ministry's budget goes towards the Veterans Independence Program, which provides veterans with care at home. Could you share with us a bit more about that program and, if there's any positive feedback you've received from veterans thus far?
So this is a program that's been in place for many, many years, originally actually designed to help World War I veterans who were aging rapidly, and we wanted to make sure that they could stay in their homes. Research has shown, not only amongst veterans, but amongst the general population, that staying in your home is a means of staying healthier and well longer. So if we can assist you in your home, that's much better for everybody. The kinds of services that are provided include things like housekeeping and groundskeeping, snow removal. We may have people come in to help with things like cleaning or washing or meal preparation to allow people to stay in their homes longer, and also to provide a bit of respite for other individuals in the family who may also have some responsibilities with respect to caring for a veteran who may have that requirement as well. So it's been a program that's been in place for a long period of time, quite successful. And in fact, lots of conversation around as we move into a post-pandemic environment and some of the challenges that we're faced during COVID with long-term care, how we can help people stay healthier in their homes for longer. And other jurisdictions at the provincial level are looking at something like a Veterans Independence Program to be able to do that same sort of thing for populations across Canada.
Speaking of the pandemic, we know the impacts it's had from a mental health perspective on our veterans. And I just saw with the budget, we've announced $140 million over the 5 years. Could you just share real quick what the plans are with those funds?
So the mental health benefit is to allow people to access treatment for mental health immediately upon application. In the past, people have had to wait for an actual decision to come from Veterans Affairs. As we've spoken about, sometimes those decisions take too long, and we recognize that immediate access to mental health is important. Any time spent waiting for mental health approaches, services, or treatment can be too long and allow for somebody to get worse, frankly, in terms of their mental health. And so what this allows to do is upon application, people will be able to access immediately mental health treatment. And while that decision is being made they'll still be able to access treatment to ensure that their conditions are being treated immediately.
Thanks for answering the spectrum. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Valdez.
Thank you, Ms. Valdez. Now I would invite Luc Desilets for 2.5 minutes, please. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question would be for Ms. Meunier or Mr. Harris. We have a department that's not that visible, might not be quite as sexy as some others, but it's one of the only ones that works directly with humans, and often humans who are struggling. And that should leave no one indifferent. Case managers do everything they can. We know that they are overwhelmed. But the humans we're talking about need to be supported, need to be equipped. They need someone alongside them. We have a witness who appeared a few months ago who told us that we may want to put in place or create liaison officer positions, individuals who could take care of veterans and make a link with case managers, help them understand what they need to do, where their file is, etc. I'd like to have your opinion on that. Is that something that could be helpful? Could that be a complementary role to this idea of case liaison officer? Thank you very much for the question. I think we're always listening for new ideas to support veterans and offer better service. I think veteran support agents play a little bit of this role at the moment. Maybe it's not as clear as a liaison agent as you've described it, but within the department, there's already a little bit that type of role in different areas. But we're always ready to listen for better ideas. And if there's another way of delivering service, we'd be happy to hear it.
Thank you. And now with the commemorations, are we planning something for the summertime? Will there be any communications about upcoming commemoration ceremonies? Because we're trying to plan our vacations. Mr. Harris, Ms. Meunier. Ms. Meunier.
We're always planning. Of course, we are coming upon the 80th anniversary of Dieppe, in August. We're also looking to commemorate and recognize more peacetime or modern operations, looking at activities to recognize the Red River flood. So there are a variety of activities. We do keep an up-to-date calendar on our website, and we'd be happy to keep you informed of larger events and activities happening throughout your region and across the country.
Merci, Madame Meunier.
Thank you, Ms. Meunier. And Mr. Desilets, you saw the popsicle, so your time is up. Now, let's go to Ms. Rachel Blaney for the next 2.5 minutes. Go ahead.
Chair, and I guess I just want to start off by saying that I disagree with Ms. Meunier. I just want to point out to everybody at this table that, in fact, in 2015 and 2017, in the letter to the Minister of Veterans Affairs from the Prime Minister, it said directly to address this issue, and then it disappeared, and I'm not going to allow it to disappear. And I also want to point out that VAC does, in fact, oversee both the OSB and the pension clause. So I understand there's multiple ministries that are involved in this, but the fact that so many veterans across this country who have served our country, so many RCMP that have served our country, worry about their partners being able to live in the same house when they die is unacceptable. So I'm just wondering if I could come to Mr. Harris. The Veteran Survivor Pension does not, in fact, apply to RCMP officers, and those veterans do fall under the minister's mandate. What is VAC doing to accommodate the needs of survivors of the RCMP veterans?
Well, there are survivor pensions. So when we speak of pensions that are in place to support disabilities that have been received as a result of their service, whether that is with the RCMP or whether that's through service with the Canadian Armed Forces, there are benefits for survivors that apply in that instance. So I think that's survivors and dependents can receive benefits as a result of that.
So I'm talking about survivor benefits. And so I'm just, I will say that at this point there is not anything for RCMP. In fact, in my conversations with the amazing veterans from the RCMP who do tremendous work, they're fundraising to support women, largely women, who've been left, who have lost their husbands, and now they have very little. And I just want to point out as well that we had a conversation, and more are coming, and I just want to say, my office is inundated with these stories, and when I hear these stories, I just know that it's an injustice, and so that is my job to voice that. But I think of Norma, who came and presented to us, who will be looking after her granddaughter who has special needs, and when he passes, she will be living on significantly less. So part of their plan is how they're going to face those challenges. So I just want to correct the record that there is not the supports for the RCMP who retire, that there are supports for the veterans, and there's a huge gap there, and it is absolutely under this department to fix it, and I certainly hope you do.
And I do apologize about me having misspoke about the RCMP.
Okay.
I would not fight with you.
Well, it's 10 seconds left, so
I think that's good for me.
Thank you, Mrs. Blaney. And now let's go back to Mr. Frank Caputo for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll actually be giving my time to MP Wagenthal. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Okay. So, Mrs. Wagenthal, 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chair. And I really appreciate the feedback that I'm getting today on this Navigators benefit online program. I just want to clarify, Mr. Harris, you indicated that downtime has been very minimal and it's due whenever there needs to be changes to what is offered on there. I would appreciate it if I could get a log of those downtimes and the reason for each of them, not going into great detail about, whatever was the change that was made, but just so that we have clarity on that. The timeline isn't making sense to me from what I've heard from veterans that were directly involved with it, indicating that it came about when the court case around the new Veterans Charter with the Afghan veterans was put in abeyance before the 2015 election, and that this was part of the agreement with all of that, and that this program went live online in 2016. So I'm not sure if we're comparing the same thing or not at this point. So if we could get clarity on that as well too, I would really appreciate it if you could bring that to committee. You know, I appreciate that these tools are there, and I think they're really important. But if there's no follow-up to get any sense of, okay, when a veteran goes through this process and sees that they think that these are things they would qualify for, and then perhaps they don't, there would need to be changes made, I would think, to make that clearer to them when they're applying. And so we know that it's one thing for a program to say this is something you deserve, and then there's the other side of that whole coin, which you guys have to deal with, and that is getting the proof required from those veterans. So I've heard a lot about benefit of the doubt and how much more it's being applied now than it has in the past, specifically because of the backlogs. Is there any way of monitoring that as well, where, you know, someone lifts 100 gallon or 100 pounds of gas in multiple containers onto a truck over and over and over again and has back injuries, but they have no proof of that? They were a reservist 16, 17, 18 years old, and now, you know, hitting their 80s, late 70s. How is that being implemented in our programs here at VAC to improve the way that we're treating our veterans in their circumstances? Ms. Meunier, I think did you want to respond?
I'm happy to, if my colleague is all right with that.
Sure, go ahead.
We certainly do take that into account now. What we would refer to, so you talked about the benefit of doubt, which is a principle laid out in our legislation and regulation. But what you're talking about is how do we use the evidence that someone may experience by virtue of their repetitive job or the nature of their work over a period of time. And we have tools which we refer to as entitlement eligibility guidelines. And that's precisely what it does. It takes positions or military occupations and the physical or mental elements connected to that type of trade over periods of time, whether it's 5, 10 years. And our officers are able to use that to say, you know, just you gave a great example. You are carrying a rucksack, jumping out of a paratrooping for 20 years. These injuries would be highly probable. Therefore, we apply the benefit of the doubt to award proactively. We also have ones related to cumulative joint trauma tools. So we are definitely moving in that direction. And so we have quite a few of those EEGs, and we'll continue to build more.
Okay. Can you tell me too, as you're dealing with all of these different injuries, I learned from one veteran, he had a helicopter accident, and when they took him and dealt with him, he got treatment for his back, but not realizing that he needed to apply for the back is split up into 4 different areas. And if you only applied for one, you didn't get support for the others. Is there not a way to make this more accessible to veterans who would not know, I have to actually make sure that my doctor applies for my entire back?
I think a couple of things. One is, we use the diagnosis that doctors will give us. So a veteran will have a diagnosis from a doctor as to what the extent of their injuries are, and if they've put in applications, we'll look at what we can do in terms of responding to the injuries or illness that they may have suffered on that front. And it does go back to what the deputy spoke about in the first hour in terms of a modernization of a table of disabilities. We use an extensive document of a table of disabilities that touches on all various aspects of the human body, and it is a very intricate and complex piece that we need to simplify to make it easier for veterans and for doctors.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And the last intervention is going to come from Mr. Darrell Sanson for 5 minutes. Please go ahead. Mr. Darrell Sanson?
Please open your mic. Excusez-moi, j'avais débranché.
My apologies. I had unplugged my earphones temporarily, but the sound is even clearer that way, so I appreciate your comprehension.
It's been a long session. I wish I could give you a little pose, but I won't be able to. The chair is Charlotte tasked today, but thank you all for showing up today and giving the information and providing the key insight on the many questions that were put to you. It's been a very good session for sure for all of us. I'd like to talk just a little bit about the transition services. We haven't talked about that a lot, and I hear it often from military individuals who are looking towards retiring and becoming veterans, or those who are released. It's a big issue, and I know that we've done a lot of work, Veteran Affairs as well as DND, in trying to facilitate that process, which is so crucial, because a veteran, I'm a believer that before they leave, they should have all the information that is required. So maybe you can speak about what we've done so far and where we see us going to improve that process. Thank you.
Thanks very much for the question. And I think we have made lots of progress. We work very, very closely with the Canadian Armed Forces, and in particular with the transition group that's been established to help military members transition professionally and effectively out of the military, whether that's due to just a retirement or whether that's related to medical issues and conditions. And so what we've started to do in a much better way over the course of the last couple of years is integrate those services and make sure that the information around Veterans Affairs and what priorities and accessibility that members, Canadian Armed Forces members may have for programs and service is provided to them as early as possible so that they can understand it, make applications, get decisions, and actually make decisions around, where they want to go. So somebody transitioning out of the military may have concerns around a post-military employment career. There was some discussion of employment earlier. We offer things like a career transition service that will help military members who are transitioning to a post-military life to build job skills, to understand how their skills from the military may translate into the private sector or even the public sector, and ensure that that's in place so people can access that a year ahead of their release out of the Canadian Armed Forces, to be able to understand what skills they might be able to get, what employment they might be most suited for, and to actually get job preparation skills, interview skills, and other things, as military members don't actually often go through interview processes. In terms of transition interviews, we provide Veterans Affairs does transition interviews with Canadian Armed Forces members who are leaving the forces to assess their needs, to assess their state of readiness and well-being, to assess what needs they might have. And so that may be issues of medical elements. They may need to continue physiotherapy that they've started in the Canadian Armed Forces and transition that to their post-military life. And we may need to help them on that front. And some of them have more severe medical needs and maybe being released medically by the military. We want to make sure that all of the benefits and services that they might require are in place as well. And so that would include disability benefits. That could include things like treatment, access to prescription drugs, or other things as well. Or in addition to that, rehabilitation. If they require some rehabilitation, whether that's from a job skills point of view, or whether that's from a physical point of view, we can put all of these things in place. And so what we've started to do is intervene earlier and earlier in the system with the support of our Canadian Armed Forces colleagues to make sure that veterans have a full opportunity to plan for what their post-military life will be and what they want it to look like, and that the department can support them.
Thank you for that very complete answer. Just a follow-up. The MyVac account is, I'm hearing more and more how positive it is for both those still serving and those that are veterans now. Are we able to indicate if there is a big uptake or increase of those active members? Because the active members, the sooner they provide and receive the information, the better off we're going to be on the way out in transition. So have we seen a bigger uptake from those who are still within the Canadian Armed Forces?
It forms a part of the transition process as well. we'd love to have people onto my VAC account as early as possible, while recognizing that, if you're still 10 years out from perhaps releasing from the Canadian Armed Forces, maybe that's too soon. So we're trying to find the sweet spot of having active members sign up as they get closer to a transition point of view, so that they can get access to all of their benefits and services. And
have we seen an increase?
We have seen an increase in the amount of both people and Canadian Armed Forces members who've.
Okay, and I know I have about 10 seconds left, but just a little advice. I think I'm hearing in speaking to some universities, I made reference to that with the minister earlier in this meeting, but I'd like to see some real concrete strategies put in place where VAC, and maybe it's happening, I don't know, and maybe you could add to that at another time, but what can we do in conversations with the universities to try to blend the information and better outreach to veterans who could access that, because the universities are excited, but they don't know really, they don't have all the info on how they can identify the veterans and make contact with them. So that's an idea. Thanks.
In 15 seconds, Mr. Harris, if you'd like to say something.
We continue our outreach and work with universities and colleges with respect to the education and training benefit. We want to see them understand it well and promote it well amongst our veteran community, and so that would be great.
Merci, Monsieur Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have to suspend because we have some votes to deal with. So on behalf of all the committee members and myself, I'd like to thank the witnesses for being with us today, and I particularly would like to salute the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Harris, Assistant Deputy Minister, Service Delivery Branch. Mrs. Sarah Lenz, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, Chief Financial Officer and Corporate Services Branch, and Madame Amy Meunier, Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy and Commemoration. So, je vous remercie énormément.
Thank you all of you. Thank you so much. And before we move on to our votes, I would ask the witnesses to disconnect from the call so that we can continue our meeting. Once again, thank you so much for being with us here. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. You're welcome, Mr. Harris.
Alors,
So we will now continue. Pursuant to Standing Order 81-4, the committee will now consider the main estimates for the year ending March 31st, 2023. We have two options. Oh, my battery is dying. We have two options. We can vote on all the votes together as a single motion, or we can vote on each one separately. Do I have unanimous consent to pass all the votes together? First of all, I see a raised hand. Mr. Casey, I simply wanted to suggest to move for the first option that we vote on all the votes together in a single motion. So that's exactly what I was about to ask the committee. Do I have unanimous consent for to vote on everything together in one block? If anyone objects, please raise your hand, and the clerk will inform me if anyone has raised their hand. So everyone is in agreement. We have unanimous consent, and the clerk is going to accompany me in this process. Do the members concur? Are we going to adopt this budget for the main estimates for the year ending March 31st, 2023 on division? Oh, very well. May I report the votes? May I report the votes to the House? Do the members agree? Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone. So that is done. And since we're here and it's the end of the meeting, unless anyone has anything else to add, Mr. Clerk, I would like to remind members of the committee that next Friday we will continue our study on the survivors' benefits for those marrying after the age of 60. So there will be several witnesses appearing as individuals and Statistics Canada will also be joining us for 1 hour from 3 to 4 p.m. next Friday. And we will carry on in the same manner. So we've just spent nearly 3 hours together. I would like to thank everyone who accompanied us today, the clerk, the analyst, all of the staff, as well as the interpreters. So, is it the pleasure of the committee to adjourn the meeting?
Mother-in-law, a happy Mother's Day. Sorry.
Yes. And I think, Chair, I think the clerk was trying to
say something?
Send us a message, yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, thank you, Monsieur Taquet.
Non, pas du tout. J'essayais juste de dire à Madame Roberts de...
No, not at all. I was just trying to tell you that Ms. Roberts wanted to speak. I see. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Roberts. And we join you in wishing a happy Mother's Day this Sunday to all the mothers for everything they do for us, the sacrifices they have made. So, ladies and gentlemen, on that, the meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful weekend.